What's up guys? Thanks for tuning in to today's video. Today we are going to talk about tactics to catch giant smallmouth. Make sure you stay tuned. We're going to have some great tips for you to get those big bronze backs.
Hey, what's up guys? So the first technique we're going to talk about for giant smallmouth today is probably one of the most famous. This is a drop shot rig. Now a drop shot rig is pretty simple to tie. You're simply going to use about a 12 to 15 pound braid main line. You're going to use a 2000 or 2500 size spinning reel. I like to use a 7 foot to 7'3" medium light rod. This is the medium light fast action serpent series by Piscifun. Now, when it comes to my leader, I really like to use either a 6 or 8 pound fluorocarbon. It kind of depends on how clear the body of water you're fishing is or how pressured it is. If you're on really clear water or highly pressured, I would recommend going down to 6 pound. Just make sure that you set your drag so those fish, when they rip, don't break your line. Now, when it comes to using baits, there's a lot of great baits out there. I'm really a big fan of the Kitech Swing Impact, the Get Bit Baits Finesse Worm, and this nice little drop shot worm by Hook Setter. Been catching a lot of big fish on this bait today. Now, when you're tying this, you want to make sure to leave at least about 6 to 10 inches of a lead line, and then you're going to come down to a sinker. Now, the type of sinker you use depends on the type of cover you're around. A ball sinker like the one that you see here is going to work better around rocks and it's going to keep you out of those snags. If you're drop shotting around wood or around weeds, you're going to want to use an elongated sinker. It's going to keep you out of the snags.
Drop shotting is a very simple technique. It only requires simple 2 to 4 inch shakes of the tip of your rod. Most people I see overwork their rod. This is a subtle technique.
So guys, this is an awesome drop shot setup. If you have any questions, make sure to comment. Okay guys, big smallmouth bait number 2. Again, this is another one that's pretty famous. Just a simple tube. Now I know years ago, everyone used to throw a tube. Nowadays, there's not nearly as many folks throwing it, which makes it even more deadly because the fish don't see it quite as often as they used to. This is a Get Bit Baits tube in leech color in 2 3/4 inches. Now, there's a lot of different tube sizes out there. There's 3.5s, 4s, 2.5s. Personally, I believe that a 2.5 to 2 3/4 inch tube is going to get you more bites from smallmouth. Smallies love to key in on small, vulnerable crayfish or baitfish, and a tube can mimic that perfectly. Now, when I'm setting up for using a tube, what I really like to do is pick up a nice medium light 6'8" to 7 foot rod. A 6'8" really allows you to get a good hook set and is still long enough to make long casts. This is the Serpent series by Piscifun in a medium light, extra fast action. That extra fast tip really allows you to dig that hook in when you get that bite from the smallie. Now, another awesome thing about using a tube is using braid, okay? A lot of people tend to use fluorocarbon or mono, but you lose a lot of sensitivity. When you're fishing a tube, you're usually around rocks. So that means you're going to want to tie a fluorocarbon leader to your braid. I typically like to use a 10 to 12 pound leader, depending on the body of water I'm fishing. If I'm around a lot of cover, I'll even go up to a 14 pound leader, just to make sure that I'm not breaking off. Tubes can be fished in a lot of different ways. You can swim a tube, you can shake it on the bottom, you can drag it, you can pop it. There's a lot of ways to fish that little bait right there. Again, I like to pair my tube up with a 2000 or 2500 size spinning reel. Personally, I really like the Carbon X and the Viper 2. Both reels are geared at a 6.2 to 1, which really makes it perfect to keep up with these big smallies as they run at the boat.
When using a tube, I really like to make long casts. Then what I'll do is I'll drag that tube along the bottom, giving it a hop every now and then, trying to imitate a crayfish as best as possible.
The next bait in our lineup for big smallmouth is the Ned Rig. The Ned Rig is basically just a mushroom head, usually fished on something really light. So the goal with a bait like this is to catch lethargic fish, but it works great when they're active as well. What you're going to do is vary the way you fish this bait. If they're really active, you can work it much more aggressively and much more fast. And if they're really lethargic, you almost just want to swim it through the water column really softly. Light line, 8 pound test, fluorocarbon leader. Again, using anywhere from a 12 to 15 pound braid main line. Same type of setup. What you're going to start to notice is there's a bit of a pattern when it comes to these smallmouth. You always want to use a rod that's really lightweight. So medium light, Personally, with a Ned Rig, you really want to make a long cast, so I like using a 7'2" medium light, fast action that allows that rod to just load up a little before the hook set. So a Ned Rig, again, lots of ways to fish it. Very, very deadly bait. I like to use a drop shot bait by Hook Setter. It's the perfect shape for a Ned Rig. And other than that, I also love to use a Get Bit Baits finesse worm or a Kitech Swing Impact. Again, you're going to notice a pattern there. These baits work on a multitude of different presentations. So go out there and try a Ned Rig. Okay guys, it's not often that you're going to see me with a casting rod in my hand when it comes to smallmouth, but there are a couple of techniques that I really like to use a casting rod for, and especially the type of casting reel that I'm using. Next on our list is the spy bait. This spy bait is made by Duo Realis. There's quite a few companies out there that make them. Duo was one of the first, and I do believe that they have the highest quality when it comes to this bait. I've caught a lot of big smallmouth off of this. Now, the rod that I'm using this on is a 6'9" medium power fast action rod. Now that medium power and fast action really allowed the fish to get hold of this bait, and that rod will load up. Now the reason I really like that medium power is because as you're getting those big head shakes from those big smallmouth, you don't want these little bitty hooks to pop out. So those head shakes are absorbed by that medium power rod. When it comes to the reel, I really love using a Phantom X. This is a 5.3-to-1 gear ratio. Now, when it comes to spy baiting, you're making really long casts and then you're slow rolling that reel. What you're doing is counting down this bait to your desired depth, and then you're just allowing it to pendulum under the water back to the boat very slowly. If you're fishing it slowly, you're probably not fishing it slow enough. So this is a very deadly bait, especially when fish are very lethargic. They tend to like to hit this bait because it has a nice little shimmy on the fall and then a very nice retrieve coming in. So guys, if you have not tried spy baiting, this is one of the newer techniques to come on for big smallies, and I can assure you it is deadly. All right, last but certainly not least is the jerkbait. So jerkbaits are very, very versatile when it comes to smallmouth fishing. And the reason I say that is because they can be fished when the water is extremely cold early in the season, all the way through summer, all the way into fall, all the way through winter. At least for those of you who don't get ice on the lakes like we do, so it makes me sad. But the jerkbait is awesome. Duo Realis makes some great jerkbaits. I also really like Lucky Craft as well as Megabass. This is one bait that I am willing to spend a bit more money on because you want to make sure it has the perfect buoyancy to suspend in cold water. Suspending in cold water is what's going to trigger a lot of the bites from smallmouth. So as that bait comes in and jerks side to side and you pause, that bait, you want it to suspend. You don't want it to rise, you don't want it to sink. You want that bait to sit in place. Sometimes in cold water scenarios, 42 to 47 degrees, you're gonna let that bait sit for up to 10 to 15 seconds before you give it a twitch. Now, as the water warms up, then you can warm up with your retrieve and you can kind of keep twitching it a little faster and a little faster. At the end of the day, what you really need to do is let the fish tell you the story. Let them tell you what they want to eat on that day and how they want to eat it. Now, when it comes to jerkbait colors, there's a ton of them. If you walk down a store and look at the shelf, you're going to have all the colors of the rainbow in jerkbaits. My rule of thumb for smallmouth is you're generally going to be fishing clear water. So you want something that's going to have some flash and also some transparency. Something that has a translucent body is going to look more like a natural bait fish in clear water. Now, conversely, if you're fishing dark or stained water, that's where yellows and oranges really come into play and allow those fish to get a bead on that jerkbait as you're fishing it. Now, when it comes to a jerkbait rod, I really like something a little bit shorter. Now, the reason I like that is because when you're out on the boat and you're working your jerkbait, it's very easy to slap the tip of your rod on the water or to hit the edge of the boat. So using a nice 6'10" rod allows me to have enough room to work the bait properly. Now, a big thing you're going to want to realize when working a jerkbait is you have to feed it slack. Now, by feeding it slack, what you're doing is you're allowing that jerkbait to be erratic under the water and dart side to side. If you jerk it on a tight line, it's going to just simply do a little wobble. Now, sometimes that can be effective, but generally fish want to hit this because it makes a very erratic motion under the water, similar to a bait fish. When it comes to reel, honestly, there is no perfect gear ratio. So I tend to go with the Phantom X 6.3 to 1. It's a perfect in-between gear ratio. And what I mean is that it's fast enough for me to take up the line in between the jerks on this lure, but it's slow enough that I can effectively fish it and cover water without going too fast. So guys, jerkbait is a great way to catch big smallmouth. It's fantastic in clear water. And I also tend to run this on a 10 to 12 pound fluorocarbon. Again, the situation dictates, but generally jerkbaits are fished over open, clear water, and that 10 to 12 pound line is gonna allow that bait to do what it should underwater.
Next time you're out chasing big smallmouth, be sure to take these 5 baits with you and catch some like these. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Head on over, check us out on Instagram, and hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. We'll see you on the water next time.